this is Warhawk Beyond 2040, and today I wanted to discuss an episode of the Justice League Unlimited series that featured a DC character who would go on to become one of my favorites. He's not very well known to a lot of comic book fans unless they've watched the show or they've read the comics. And, you know, when people ask me who are my favorite DC characters, the obvious answers, of course, are Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and The Flash. But there is one guy in the background who came in and completely owns this entire story arc. He has no special powers. He's not really what you would call the strongest guy of the entire Justice League, far from it. But his greatest weapon was his intelligence. And if there was one guy I had to choose for the right to challenge Batman for the title of the world's greatest detective, it would be none other than the faceless man himself, the one and only Vic Sage, also known as The Question. Now, growing up and collecting comic books, The Question was not really a guy that was on my radar much. I didn't really know a lot about him. I always saw his picture in various comic book panels or on front covers, and I didn't really know who he was. I didn't really know what his backstory was. But it wasn't until I was watching Justice League Unlimited and I was really getting into the whole Cadmus story arc. The Question really stood out to me as a key player in that story arc. Everybody else played their part, especially Batman and Superman, and even Amanda Waller as well. But for me, the Question really stood out to me as the guy who not only carried this entire story arc, but he added so much drama, emotion, and realism to this entire story arc itself. And like I said at the beginning, he had no special powers. He wasn't the strongest guy in the DC universe, but he was very intelligent and he was incredibly fearless and he wasn't afraid to, no pun intended, ask the questions. He wasn't afraid to get really deep into the mystery and the conspiracy aspects of this whole situation. And the episode that cemented me as a fan of The Question was an episode called Question Authority. Now, this episode I remember the most for was The Question going out of his way to try and solve the mystery and link the connection between Lex Luthor and Cadmus. Now, throughout this story arc, Lex Luthor has claimed he's gone straight and he's running a campaign for office as the next president. Now, this episode really stood out to me. Not a lot's happened. There was no big epic moments, but there was just these little things that really were powerful and really spoke to me a lot about the possibility of what could happen if Lex Luthor became president. We already saw that in the Justice Lord's world, and things didn't go down the way they should. They didn't end well. The Question saw exactly what was going on in our world, and he got hold of footage on a laptop, and this pretty much pushed the Question over the edge. Now, the Question was always known for his eccentric behavior, but what he discovered on this file really pushed him into near insanity. But I always looked at the question as this was a guy who was very passionate about his work, maybe a little bit too much, but he was just obsessed with trying to solve the mystery of this case. What is the connection between Lex Luthor and Cadmus? And Jeffrey Combs was awesome as the voice of Vic Sage slash The Question. He did a great job as the Scarecrow in the new Batman Adventures, but for me, when I think of Jeffrey Combs, The Question is always the first one that comes to mind. And for my money, Jeffrey Combs is the definitive voice of The Question. I cannot imagine anybody else but him providing the voice of Vic Sage slash The Question. Now, there were two moments in the Question Authority episode that really cemented me as a fan of The Question. The first one, of course, was when The Question confronted Superman about the shocking footage that he discovered on the computer files of the Justice Lord Superman killing President Lex Luthor in the White House Oval Office. And The Question kicked off this incredible scene by walking straight up to Superman, who was in the middle of some repair work in the Watchtower. Something I can help you with? I hope so. But I assume you don't want to discuss your White House weenie roast in front of a crowd. And then Superman brought him to the conference room, and what we got next was some of the best dialogue you will ever see in any form of media, not just animation or live action, in any form of media. And all due respect to George Newbern, he was fantastic as always as Superman, but Jeffrey Combs as the Question owned this scene and the next one that I'll be discussing in a moment. And this is some of the more awesome dialogue that was provided by the Question. Always wondered what was in here. Private conference room. Original members only, yes? A place where you're free to discuss your secrets and lies. You said something about me in the White House. Not you, exactly. Another version of you. Hmm? Quit dancing around it. Tell me what you know. I know what you told everyone. The Justice Lords, a parallel universe version of the Justice League who came to Earth to rid it of crime just as they had on their own world. With Lex Luthor's help, our Justice League managed to rout them. I also know what you didn't tell anyone outside of the original 7 Justice League members. On that other Earth, so very much like our own, a Superman, so very much like you, killed the president. And Superman bent the chair and said, Question, no one can know about this. Or what? You incinerate me too? I'd never do anything like that, wouldn't you? And this is the part where The Question really won me over as a fan. Didn't you recently try to lobotomize Doomsday with your heat vision, just as the Justice Lord did? That's different. It's the same. A heavily armed watchtower with an army of proactive heroes, Luthor running for president. If it's not quite the same, it soon will be. Have you seen Amanda Waller's computer simulations? Batman told me about them. Did he tell you that all the models predicted that a war between the Justice League and the government would devastate the planet? And this was the moment where The Question owned Superman. We would never fight the government. Not even if Luthor was the government. Oh boy. Awesome stuff. Predestined. Flash will die. You will kill Luthor in retaliation. Superhuman arms race. Armageddon. Inevitable. Brilliant stuff. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Now, that sort of scene with The Question confronting Superman, telling him the truth, predicting all these crazy things. The only other person who would do such a thing would be Batman. And here is the question: he's no Batman. He's not strong like Batman. Is he on the same level of intelligence as Batman? Possibly. Batman still has the edge in some areas. But for someone like the question to confront Superman, knowing full well that Superman could just throw him into outer space, you've got to have balls the size of Krypton to confront Superman. Mega props to the question. Jeffrey Combs owned this scene. But this wasn't the only time that the question owned an iconic DC character. The next scene, he owned Superman's greatest enemy, Lex Luthor. But he didn't come out of it smelling like roses. But just the fact that he confronted Lex Luthor shows you that the question has guts. Now, the question confronting Superman is my all time favourite scene from the Question Authority. But this scene where the question confronts Lex Luthor could very well be very close to topping that. As I said earlier, the question didn't exactly come out of this confrontation smelling like roses, but there was some awesome dialogue from this scene that really cemented me as a fan of the question. Here's some of the dialogue from that scene. So Lex Luthor walks into his office and sees the question sitting in his chair. Question, isn't it? I believe you took something that belongs to me. Have you seen the latest polls? It's beginning to look like you're going to be our next president, just like in that other world. I wouldn't bet against me. No, it wouldn't be prudent. I want you to understand something, Luthor. Although my distaste for you as a human being is Brobdingnagian, what I'm about to do isn't personal. What are you babbling about? Everything that exists has a specific nature. Each entity exists as something in particular and has characteristics that are part of it. What A is A, and no matter what reality he calls home, Luthor is Luthor. If I'm to save the world, your existence must come to an end before you take office. You're going to kill me so that Superman can't. I'm a well-known crackpot. The Justice League's reputation will survive my actions, and Superman's legacy will remain intact. Interesting plan. Unfortunately for you, it's not really an option. Excellent stuff here. And this is where Lex Luthor obviously revealed himself to have superpowers, and he just absolutely kicked the crap out of the question, put him through a table, and all that stuff. And he put him in a hospital bed. But just the fact that the question was willing to kill Lex Luthor just to protect Superman's reputation is very admirable. I would have loved to have seen, obviously they didn't do this, but I would have loved to have seen if the Joker was in Lex Luthor's place. What would the question have done then? Would he have done the same thing for Batman? I definitely think that should have been explored if the question appeared in maybe the new Batman Adventures, if that show had continued, or something like that. Because, you know, for the question to confront both Superman and Lex Luthor in the same episode, not even two scenes apart. It was just like, boom, confront Superman, next, confront Lex Luthor. Tremendous stuff. Wow. And as I said, even though the question didn't come out on top, he still got the last word. But I think really he owned Superman, maybe just a little bit more. Lex Luthor is Lex Luthor, but there isn't much in it, I would say. And that was pretty much the episode that's made me a fan of the question. And really, after playing such a big part in such a huge story arc for the DCAU. I think maybe the Question should have got his own spin-off series with Huntress. Maybe him and Huntress could have been the Mulder and Scully of the DCAU, because outside of Superman, Batman, and Lex Luthor and Amanda Waller, I would also say that Huntress and especially the Question, they played key roles in that story arc. So maybe they should have got their own spin off. I mean, if you're not going to give the Question his own show, fine, but maybe he could share that billing with another character if you're not confident in him carrying the load on his own. I don't know. Maybe they could have done something like that. I still would like a Question show, even to this day. Live action, animation, anything. As long as it's Jeffrey Combs is involved in some capacity, that's what I would like to see one day. Who knows? Now that we've got a brand new cinematic universe, DCU, maybe James Gunn could give us a mini series on the HBO Max of the Question. I personally would like to see that, because I'm hungry to see lesser known DC characters get the spotlight, and I think the Question would definitely fit that bill perfectly. He's a great character, great detective, pretty average look, hat and coat and tie, no face. It's a pretty standard look, but still a cool look nonetheless. But the Question playing such a big part in the Justice League animated series, that to me made me a fan of the Question, and I want to see more of him. When that will be, who knows? But I'm happy with what we got, but that doesn't mean I don't want to see more. But time will tell, really. So, anyway, that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What was your thoughts on the Question Authority episode? Did that make you a fan of the Question? Which moments in the Justice League Unlimited series made you a fan? Was it this episode, or was there another moment in the show that made you a fan of him? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time. So until then, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.